The idea for the plant came from the fact that Burkina produces nearly 2 million tons of cashew apples every year, and when you look at cashew nuts, there are two products, the cashew nut, which everyone knows is valued, and the cashew apple, where over 2 million 4-day counts are thrown away. So our mission is to transform 5,000 tons of cashew apples a year into a concentrate that can later be transformed into other products.
An $11.5 million cashew processing plant is being built in Péni, Burkina Faso. Not for the nut, but for the fruit no one cares about. For decades, millions of cashew apples rotted in silence, wasted year after year. Now suddenly, they're at the center of a national transformation. Why would a country bet its future on a discarded fruit? What's the real plan behind this factory that the West is too naive to understand? Let's find out. For decades, it was everywhere. On the soil, in the dust, sometimes kicked aside by passing feet, the cashew apple. Bright red, golden yellow, plump, and soft-skinned. In the villages of southwestern Burkina Faso, during harvest season, you could see them lying under trees like confetti after a forgotten party. Locals knew the smell. Sweet, slightly fermented. Some children bit into them, others didn't bother. They were never part of the plan. The world never came asking for cashew apples. They came for the nut, the kernel hidden in the hard shell beneath the fruit. That was the export. That was what Europe wanted in its snacks and India wanted in its sweets. The fruit? No one asked. And so, Burkina Faso never answered. This wasn't just a missed opportunity. It became a habit. Farmers would collect the nut, crack it out, bag it, and toss the apple aside. Some tried to ferment it into local brews. Others used it for animal feed. But nobody scaled it. Nobody believed it was worth it. And over time, an entire generation accepted a strange kind of logic. We grow two things but sell one. We keep the other one buried in the dirt. But the apple was never worthless. It's one of the most vitamin C-rich fruits on the planet, far more than oranges. It's juicy, tangy, and aromatic. It can be fermented into wine, distilled into alcohol, or pressed into vinegar. Brazil has entire industries built on it. India bottles its juice. But in Burkina Faso, it remained a ghost fruit, seen but never truly valued. So why didn't things change sooner? Because global agriculture doesn't reward potential. It rewards systems. For Burkina Faso to profit from the cashew apple, it would have needed machines, cold chains, distribution, packaging, and above all, belief. Not belief in the fruit, but in itself. For a post-colonial economy trained for export dependency, that belief was in short supply. And let's be honest, cashew apples are tricky. They bruise easily. They ferment fast. You can't store them long. Without a processing unit nearby, they go bad before they even leave the farm. So farmers stuck to what worked. Sell the nut, dump the fruit. But as global food trends shifted towards superfoods, exotic flavors, and natural drinks, the world slowly began to crave what Burkina Faso had always ignored. Cashew juice popped up on European wellness blogs. Cashew wine gained interest in South Asia. Small tests showed huge demand. But Burkina Faso wasn't ready. Then came the statistics: cold, sobering, and humiliating. According to a CEFCOD study, the country produces around 400,000 tons of cashew apples every year, and nearly all of them go to waste. Even worse, despite having a processing capacity of 30,000 tons of cashew nuts, Burkina Faso only managed to process around 16,000 tons in 2024. The infrastructure was there, the harvest was there, but the system still lagged. This disconnect between abundance and underuse, between potential and paralysis, haunted policymakers. Something had to break the cycle, something physical, industrial, and symbolic. Not just a farm project or a study, but a bold act of economic imagination. That's when the idea of Péni emerged, a place where the fruit wouldn't rot anymore, a place where the value would be trapped, not exported raw, a facility not just for nuts, but for the unwanted half of the cashew tree's gift. And so the fruit that died quietly under trees for 50 years is now being resurrected. But this leads to a bigger question. What exactly is being built in Péni? Who's behind it? And how will this factory turn a ghost fruit into a national symbol? Let's move to Péni and see what's rising from the red soil. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Drive west from Bobo Dioulasso, and the landscape opens into a sprawl of dry bush, scattered farms, and red soil. It's the kind of place that doesn't make headlines, until now. Because in Péni, a town that once whispered among Burkina Faso's cashew-growing regions, something massive is rising from the ground. A cashew processing factory worth $11.5 million. But this isn't your typical agro project. It doesn't carry the usual donor brand logos or foreign consultants holding clipboards. This one was kickstarted by President Ibrahim Traoré himself on May 22, 2025. The message was crystal clear. This isn't charity, it's strategy, and it's ours. What makes the Péni facility different is not just what it will do, it's what it represents. At a technical level, the plant will process 5,000 tons of cashew products annually, but not in the way you'd expect. It won't focus solely on almonds, the global cash crop that gets shipped in containers from Cotonou or Abidjan to buyers in India and Vietnam. No, Péni is focused on the forgotten side of the harvest, the apple. Using specialized equipment and processing lines, the factory will produce juice, wine, vinegar, and alcohol. Entire product categories that previously didn't exist at scale in the country. This isn't just about adding value, it's about creating value from zero. More importantly, it's about owning the means of transformation. For decades, Burkina Faso has exported its raw cashew nuts. The actual value, cracking, cleaning, roasting, packaging, branding, happens abroad. That's where profits multiply. That's where jobs are created. That's where Africa has historically lost. But with Péni, that chain breaks. Here's how. Every year, the factory will inject over $867,000 directly into the rural economy just through raw cashew purchases. That's guaranteed demand for local farmers, not the volatile prices of international buyers, not the risk of spoilage and rejection at port, but local stability. It also shifts power. If Burkina Faso can control its cashew processing, it no longer has to beg for favorable trade terms. It negotiates from strength. But beyond economics, there's something else this factory sends into the air, something political. The plant's scale, its ambition, and its very location are deliberate. Péni is not the capital. It's not a major logistics hub. It's rural, it's raw, it's historically ignored. And that's the point. By placing a high-tech processing unit here, the government is redefining where power is allowed to exist in the country. It's saying, development doesn't only belong to Ouagadougou, it belongs to the farmers. It belongs to the regions that produce, not just those that govern. The plant also serves as a blueprint for something bigger. According to the Burkina Faso Council for Agro-Pastoral and Fisheries Sectors (CBF), which oversees the project, this is just the beginning. Péni is meant to be a model unit, a proof of concept. If successful, it opens the door for replicated industrial units across other cashew zones, and beyond that, into other agricultural sectors. Mangoes, shea, sorghum, even cotton byproducts. But perhaps the most radical element of Péni is its timing. This factory is launching at a time when Burkina Faso, under Ibrahim Traoré, is undergoing a broader redefinition of sovereignty, militarily, financially, and now, agriculturally. It's no coincidence that the same government pushing for monetary independence, a gold refinery, and a postal bank is also building processing factories. These aren't isolated projects. They are links in a chain of autonomy. Péni is Burkina Faso's way of saying, we are done exporting poverty disguised as trade. We are building wealth from the ground up. Still, no building, no matter how symbolic, can succeed alone. It needs people who believe in it, systems that support it, and minds that are willing to unlearn decades of dependency. And that's the next challenge, because building a factory is one thing. Getting a nation to believe in what it can produce, that's something else entirely. When a country like Burkina Faso builds a factory in a place like Péni, it doesn't just press fruit, it presses buttons. And right now, this quiet town is triggering silent alarms in global trade circles. Because the products about to roll out of Péni, cashew wine, vinegar, alcohol, juice, are not just food items. They are signals of disruption. The world is structured in a way where value is geographically assigned. Africa grows, Asia processes, the West consumes. That's the order. And for decades, Burkina Faso played its role, exporting raw cashew nuts to processors in Vietnam and India, who turned them into polished products, branded them, and sold them to Europe and North America for 3, sometimes 4 times the original price. In this system, Burkina Faso was essential, but expendable. It supplied the raw material, yes, but it didn't control the flow of money, technology, or branding. The irony? Without the African farmer, none of it exists. But the farmer stays poor, while everyone else along the chain gets richer. Péni is about to rupture that cycle, not by shouting, but by creating something the trade system never saw coming: competition from the bottom. Let's consider this. In 2024 alone, Burkina Faso earned $111 million in export revenue from raw cashew nuts. That sounds impressive until you realize that by the time those nuts are processed, packaged, and retailed in Europe or Asia, they generate hundreds of millions more for someone else. That money never returns. It never reaches the farmer's home. It never builds local infrastructure. It just floats away, extracted in plain sight. But a locally owned processing facility in Péni? That changes everything. First, it introduces value-added products that weren't even on the map before. Juices for wellness markets, artisanal vinegar for gourmet shelves, and cashew wine, a rising trend in South Asia now being given a West African identity. These aren't low-value exports. They're premium, niche, and in demand. Products with longer shelf lives, higher margins, and market appeal far beyond the continent. Second, it introduces price resistance. When Burkina Faso only exported raw nuts, it had no control over prices. If Vietnam offered 1 cent more, buyers shifted. If India imposed a trade restriction, shipments stopped. Burkina Faso was at the mercy of buyers. Now, with local processing, that leverages shifts. Burkina Faso can say, "We'll sell you nuts, but we're also keeping some for ourselves. We'll be exporting juice this year." It reduces vulnerability. It gives the country bargaining power. It signals to middlemen, you're not the only route anymore. Third, it sets a new standard for regional trade. Imagine if Burkina Faso begins exporting cashew juice to Senegal, Mali, and Ghana. Imagine if African airlines start serving Burkina Bay cashew wine. Suddenly the continent becomes its market, not just a pit stop between harvest and export. Intra-African trade grows, and the dependence on former colonial economies weakens. To global players who've grown fat on predictable African exports, this is not a minor shift, it's a threat. Because when one country processes its produce, others begin to ask, why not us? Ghana with cocoa, Nigeria with palm oil, Ivory Coast with rubber. The logic of raw export begins to crack. And when that logic cracks, so does the financial architecture built on it. Trade brokers lose leverage. Shipping routes get rerouted. Processing hubs in Asia face competition from where the crops are grown. Western importers can no longer dictate terms with the same ease. It's a domino effect, set in motion not by governments alone, but by machines slicing apples in Péni. Yet the revolution won't look loud. It won't
Her decision to invite several BRICS countries to the 2020.
It will come on supermarket shelves, in new tastes, in shifting supply chains. And the people who once picked cashew apples only to toss them aside will now be producing the world's newest luxury beverages. That's how a bottle of cashew juice could undo years of economic injustice. Quietly, sweetly, powerfully. But with all this change brewing, there's one barrier left: belief. Not from investors or exporters, but from within. Because as the factory gears up to challenge global norms, it still faces an even harder task at home. The machines are coming. The pipes, the boilers, the fermenters, the conveyor belts, all will arrive in Péni. They'll hum with promise, churn out bottles, and humbly announce that Burkina Faso is now in the business of transformation. But long before the first drop of cashew juice is bottled, one question will still hang in the air. Will people believe in it? Because the harsh truth is this: machines don't change nations. People do. And right now, the mindset required to sustain the cashew revolution may still be lagging behind the metal that's meant to power it. For years, generations of Burkina Bay farmers, traders, and even policymakers have been trained, often unconsciously, to think of their country as a producer of raw goods. The role of Burkina Faso was to supply nuts, cotton, gold, and livestock. What happened after those goods left the border was someone else's concern. Transformation, be it roasting, packaging, branding, or marketing, belonged elsewhere. Usually Europe, sometimes in Asia, rarely here. This belief is so deep-rooted that it has become a quiet national reflex. You farm, you sell, you wait, you hope for a good price, you never expect more than that. And yet the Péni factory demands the exact opposite. It demands that farmers become entrepreneurs, that cooperatives behave like supply chains, and that local business owners start thinking about bottling, distribution, shelf life, and branding. It requires teachers to start seeing food science as patriotic. It requires schools to teach agro-industry, not just agronomy. It even requires consumers, yes, everyday Burkinabe, to see a bottle of cashew wine on a store shelf and choose it not because it's cheaper, but because it's ours. This is no small ask, because while infrastructure can be imported, confidence cannot. And for a nation that has spent decades exporting its wealth and importing its value, the leap from farmhand to industrial actor is not intuitive. It must be built, taught, repeated, and believed. Then there's the bureaucracy. As with many post-colonial economies, the state apparatus often moves more slowly than the ambition of its people. Licensing, tax codes, quality inspections, export permits, these can all become roadblocks if the system hasn't been reoriented to favor local transformation. A farmer can grow faster than the market can absorb. A factory can produce more than the port can process. Without systemic alignment, progress becomes frustration. And there's more. Packaging and branding, essential for value-added products, are rarely local. Does Burkina Faso have domestic suppliers for glass bottles, labels, caps, QR code tracking? Not yet. So while the juice may be local, the container might be foreign. That means costs go up, profits go down, and the entire idea of self-sufficiency starts to erode, unless local industries rise in tandem. Even consumers need to be re-educated. In many African countries, imported means better. A drink from France carries prestige. A wine from South Africa commands trust. A bottle labeled "Made in Burkina Faso" still has to earn that trust, inch by inch. This psychological hurdle, internalized inferiority, is harder to fix than any supply chain glitch. So, how do you overcome this invisible wall? You invest not just in factories, but in narratives. You fund not just equipment, but education. You train communities to see their labor not as survival, but as a strategy. You celebrate the launch of a cashew vinegar the same way you'd celebrate a rocket launch. Because for a country reclaiming its economic agency, the stakes are just as high. And most importantly, you build networks. Farmers must be linked to buyers, who are linked to transporters, who are linked to exporters, who are linked to regulators. A cashew apple doesn't become a product by itself. It becomes one when every person in the chain sees themselves not as a servant to the market, but as a shareholder in a national mission. In short, the Péni factory may have the steel, but without the belief, the training, and the shift in national psychology, it risks becoming what many projects in Africa have become, a monument to what could have been. Which brings us to the final, most important question of all. Can a factory change a country? The machines may be humming, the farmers may be ready, the minds may begin to shift. But beneath all of that, there's a deeper question, one that no blueprint or government policy can answer outright. Can cashew apples teach Africa to dream bigger? This might sound like a strange question to ask about a piece of fruit, but look closer. The cashew apple isn't just a byproduct, it's a symbol, a metaphor for everything Africa has been taught to ignore about itself. Bright, rich, full of potential yet left to rot. A resource undervalued not because it lacked worth, but because the systems that define worth never included it. Sound familiar? For decades, African nations have played roles in someone else's economy. Grow the crops, extract the minerals, ship the goods, then wait for the world to tell you what they're worth. This has created a pattern of obedience, even dependency. But every so often a disruption occurs. A single act, a single project, a single moment that dares to question, what if the value never left? Péni's cashew factory is one such moment. Because when Burkina Faso decided not to export those apples, but to bottle them, ferment them, and brand them, it challenged a continent-wide assumption that Africa's job is to harvest, not to transform. That wealth happens elsewhere. That innovation requires permission. But this factory didn't ask for permission. It didn't wait for a grant or to be validated. It looked at something discarded and said, there's gold in that. We just haven't taught ourselves how to see it. This shift from extraction to imagination is what dreaming bigger looks like. And it doesn't stop with cashews. If Burkina Faso can redefine its relationship with one crop, what else can change? Ghana with cocoa, Ethiopia with coffee, Kenya with tea, Nigeria with shea butter, Madagascar with vanilla. Everywhere across the continent, the raw is waiting to be refined, not just by machines, but by mindset. The cashew apple then becomes a teacher. It shows that even the most ignored parts of a supply chain can become the center of a new industry. It proves that value is not inherent, it is constructed. And most importantly, it reminds Africans that you don't need to mimic the West to matter. You only need to believe in what you already have. But dreaming bigger also comes with risk. It means choosing the uncertain path over the predictable one. It means investing in infrastructure that no one else believes in yet. It means facing export lobbies, international buyers, and entrenched elites who benefit from Africa remaining where it is, at the bottom. Dreaming bigger means choosing to disappoint the old system to build a new one. That takes courage and clarity, because it's not just about cashew juice on a shelf in Ouagadougou. It's about rewriting how Burkina Faso sees itself, not as a supplier of raw goods, but as a designer of finished stories. Each bottle, each package, each label that says "Made in Burkina Faso" is a challenge to the world. Look again. We are not what you thought. And as those products make their way into regional markets, maybe into Ghanaian supermarkets, Ivorian cafes, or Senegalese hotels, they carry a quiet revolution with them. Not loud, not violent, but transformational. They whisper to the next young entrepreneur, if they can do it with fruit, what can you do with yours? They nudge the next policymaker to consider, if we did it in cashews, why not in cotton? Why not in sorghum? Why not in everything? They remind every African that we've always had the raw material. The question was never about supply, it was about belief. So can cashew apples teach Africa to dream bigger? Yes, not because they are magical, but because they were ignored. And what a nation chooses to stop ignoring reveals what it's ready to become. Burkina Faso is no longer waiting to be told its value. It's bottling it, fermenting it, labeling it. And soon the world will taste what it once threw away. Do you think this small step means a lot? What if these efforts keep increasing? Won't it change Africa? Let us know in the comments section. Do you support Traoré for this decision? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about. The Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.